Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back into my channel. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about what does it take being a solution architect. So, like especially in Microsoft Azure platform, so they provide Microsoft Azure well-architected framework. So it speaks about like the Azure well-architected framework is a set of guidance tenets that can be used to improve the quality of workload. The framework consists of 5 pillars of architectural excellence: reliability, security, cost optimization, operational excellence, performance efficiency. So it kind of break down in details like the reliability, the ability of a system to recover from failure and continue to function. Security, protective application and data from threat, and cost optimization, managing cost to maximize the value delivered. Operational excellence, operations process that keeps a system running in production. And last but not least, performance and efficiency, the ability of a system to adapt to changing load. And if you would go down here, there's this little video here, if you were to play
Speaking
that.
to David Stanford about the well-architected framework and giving you an intro to the whole series. Really looking forward to seeing you there. Welcome to the Azure Enablement Show, where we'll be discussing the challenges you and our other tech-savvy customers have encountered. Together, we're going to be talking with experts to find out how they think about these problems, recommended tools and best practices, and the tips they have learned from years of experience that you can use. So today we're going to be talking about architecting successful workloads on Azure using well-architected. And to do that, I wanted to bring my colleague, David Stanford, in. So David, I've been thinking a lot about how do we talk about this stuff? And the only conclusion I can come to is that we really need to talk about this from the customer perspective. And I think the only way I know to do that is to sort of stand in as a customer. I'm going to try something that I heard works in these videos. I've never tried it before. Let's see if it works. Nope, not doing that. Nope, still not there.
I think that's the one, David.
Nope, definitely not. So I'm going to try the other hand because this obviously isn't working.
Stop. That's the right one.
Okay, so now I know how to turn into a customer. I think I'm going to go back to host mode, and then we should probably back up and talk a little bit about like the well-architected framework and what it's all about.
Well, I'm glad you figured out how the snapping works, David.
Cool. Well, so now that we've got that part down and we're able to sort of portray the customer, like I have a way of switching to customer mode, I think we probably should back up a little bit and talk about the well-architected framework, the basics, the what, the why, the who. So let's just start off with the what is the well-architected framework?
Well, it's a set of best practice guidance that speaks to a couple roles in every organization, specifically solutions architects, engineering managers, and lead engineers, and is intended really to help these folks identify and optimize their workloads. More specifically, it's about running your workloads with intention. Let me pull up a slide really quick and we can kind of walk through the framework.
Yeah, that'd be super useful.
To start with, let's take a look at the 5 pillars of the well-architected framework. We'll start at the top with cost optimization. It's really focused on identifying the costs that can be optimized while still delivering maximal value for each workload. Then performance efficiency is really focused on helping you ensure that your workloads can adapt to changes in load. For example, if you have a large event like the Super Bowl, a Black Friday sale, product release, how do you test, monitor, and act in those situations? Reliability is focused on how your workload handles failures and how you recover afterwards. Security, we all know what that is, really. It's really how you protect your workload from threats and bad actors. And then finally, operational excellence is how you deploy your workload to the cloud. How are you managing it once it gets there? Then once you have a good understanding of the 5 pillars, then the next step is to identify the appropriate places to make trade-offs between them to meet your business requirements.
What do you mean by trade-offs?
Well, for example, as you improve your reliability in any given workload, you might start adding additional regions or availability zones, additional backup points, all of which have an impact on your cost. So you need to balance those between how important are the reliability considerations to your workload, what type of SLA are you looking for, and what does your budget look like, and what trade-offs do you make there?
Okay, so that makes total sense to me. So why this whole framework at all? Let's just answer that question straight up.
Sure. So as you think about architecting any particular workload, it can be harder than it looks because you have to identify which trade-offs to make to meet your business requirements. And this really gives you a consistent set of guidance to make sure you're thinking about all the right things.
And when you say thinking about all the things, I think of the word architect as something you do in the beginning, but I get the sense that this is not the whole story.
Absolutely. This is absolutely not intended to be a one and done type thing. You really want to use this throughout the entire life cycle and focus on improving continuously as you go.
So I get right. So that makes sense to me. So I get the sense that it's less about a single architecting, but it's more about being in a well-architected state as much as you can be.
That's right.
Okay, so let's do a lightning round with some frequently asked questions. So David, who can help me if I'm in the middle of trying to work with the well-architected framework and I get stuck?
That's a great question, David. Let's take a look at that slide that I had up before. There's actually a whole ecosystem around the well-architected framework of folks that can actually aid you as you're going through this. So there's several teams from Microsoft that can help, between cloud solutions architects, fast track engineers, just to name a couple specifically. And really the advantage that they bring is that they layer their knowledge and experience in with the best practices provided by the Azure well-architected framework to accelerate your workload optimization journey. Along with that, you can get additional recommendations from Azure Advisor. There's content that lives in the Azure Architecture Center that has design principles and reference architectures. And then, of course, we have partner and service offers that you can leverage as well.
Okay.
Now, I have a question for you.
Yeah, hit me.
How does the well-architected framework differ from the cloud adoption framework?
Oh yeah. So that it's a little confusing, right? Because they're both frameworks, and we talk about them as both being important. The way I think about it is that the well-architected framework is trying to start from taking a workload and how to make that workload successful and thinking outwards from that point, thinking out from the workload. And I think of the cloud adoption framework as something that's more thinking about the general context, what goes on in the central IT org, what goes on in the whole org. And that framework looks from that perspective down into the workload. So to a certain extent, it's the way we start from either from the smallest scope and look out, or from the largest scope and look in. And I think that in my experience, you want to take stuff from both, because both are going to give you the perspective, because we're always doing that all the time. We're always looking from the workload out, and when we're deploying stuff, and we're always looking from the greater context in as we're figuring out how to work in the organization to get the workloads we need on Azure working really well. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you my last question for the frequently asked question lightning round, which is, how do I start with this stuff?
Well, that really depends a little bit on you and what matters the most to you. So we do have a comprehensive set of content in Microsoft Docs that you can leverage, or if you prefer to start from a learning path, you can take a look at Microsoft Learn, which is really an interactive platform that helps you learn new skills. We do have a learning module available there.
Okay.
for well architected. And then, as we talked about in the first question, our partners, our CSAs, our field, all of them can help you adopt this as well. My personal favorite place to start, though, is by taking a well architected review assessment on the Microsoft Assessments platform.
So that sounds cool too. I realize that we have to end here, but would you be willing to come back in another video, especially if I can do that snappy thing again, and like look at the well architected review with me?
Absolutely, I would love to run through it with you as a customer and see how a customer might interact with it.
Cool. So I'll look forward to doing that. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you everybody for watching this. We hope it was useful to you. And we'll hope you'll join us in the next video in which we'll be diving into the well-architected review. Hope to see you there. Take care now.
All right, guys. So basically, this is an overview of the well-architected framework that Azure put in place, so you would have a better understanding of all the tools to become a solution architect or a cloud architect. Why not? So as you can see here, they go all the concepts and things. So design, principle, Azure well architected review, Azure advisor, documentation, and everything here. So you have these resources under your belt. You could go over them. So you start improving the reliability Azure workloads. So just to avoid making this video too long, but you could tell that there's so many resources out there that you can profit the opportunity to go over them, just study them, and make sure that, if it's something that's your interest, you would be, you wouldn't mind to spend time and get to know these things better. The other resource I have, again, before I jump into this little slide that I prepare, is this the Azure Architecture Center. So Azure Architecture Center, so guidance for architecting solution on Azure using established patterns and practice. So architecture, browse, Azure architecture, concept, explore, cloud best practice, assess, optimize, and review your workload. So these are tools that Azure put in place. So design the cloud, optimize your workload, choose the right technology. So you see here they have choose a compute service, choose Kubernetes, at the edge option, choose a data store, choose a load balancing, services, messages service, choose an Internet of Things solution. So they have a central scenario and stuff like that. So you could take a look at this here. You could come here and look at all these technologies yourself. These are very helpful. It's a vast of knowledge about these technologies that you're going to be using as a solution architect. You may not be really hands-on, but you have to explain certain things to customers. They have to understand. So let me switch back here. So these little slide that I prepare here, starting from here, it says that solution architect roles and responsibility. So again, I have wanted to chat to you about what it means to be a solution architect, about the role. So just generally, we'll talk about what the roles involve. So the different type of task that you might perform, and then I also wanted to bring into your attention some of these, resources that Microsoft provided, like I did showing you that the well-architected framework and some, and what can you access so in the architectural center. Now, it isn't the sort of stuff that you really going to be tested on, but hopefully this is useful information that will be help you out if you are planning on becoming or working, in the Azure solution architect world. So um now we actually have a lot of different types of solution architect roles. So you can be a very hands-on and actually involved with all aspects of solution architect from design through implementation. Or you might be very hands-off and actually just, enterprise architecture or hands-on with your solution over engineers. So whatever it looks like, there's a lot of commonalities with the responsibility working as a solution architect. For a solution architect, first and foremost, if you are typically going to be involved in some sort of initial requirements gathering, so initial requirement gatherings, this is a scenario where now you could be a really, it could be, like I said, it could be a really simple initial consult where you, as a solution architect, are just going to talk to a customer and say, for instance, hey, what is actually your goal? What are you looking for? Are you looking to migrate the web app to Azure? Or are you going to start a new server or maybe a whole of organization migration to Azure or stuff like that? So, you just kind of question the customer to find out their needs. So here you are as a solution architect, and there go you have to, there go your customer. So you kind of question them to find out what are their needs, what are their goals are. So what does it look like, being a solution architect? You're always going to have to interact with customers, talking to them, find out what is their problem so you would create a solution. And this is why they call this a solution architect, because basically what that is it's as if that you go to a doctor, you kind of question, the doctor would have to question you and find out, okay, so what is your problem? What's the reason that you're here for? I have a toothpick. I mean, so if you have I mean, I have a back pain, okay, how long ago? What is, what exercise when you do that you feel this problem, affecting your back the most or whatever it is. So it's kind of like you question them to find out. So it depending on what that initial discussion reveals you, and probably you're going to go back and then initially, and actually put together some solutions, some sort of solution, scope and pricing. So now the scope and pricing, like I put here, like a solution and scope and pricing. So typically we call this a statement of work. Down here, like you can see, we call this a statement of work. Now this statement of work is going to say things like, what is it that you are actually doing? How long might it take, and how many resources are going to be involved, and typically, like, how much it is going to cost. It's a very important thing to realize that customers always want to pay attention to the cost of their products. It's not like they love technology, but for the sake of their business, they have to have the technology. running. So you have to pay careful attention as a solution architect or cloud architect, whatever name or title that you want to give to it. So it's important that you go over the course and make sure that all, as much as they want the solution to be scalable, reliable, but you have to pay attention on the scoping and pricing and stuff like that. So say if the customer is happy with that, and hopefully you'll get approval and you can move on to the next phases, which would be like also you could call that an initial statement of work. It's the same, which will be the detailed solution design. So now it is worth calling out that sometimes, I mean, now this one year it is worth calling that out, initial statement of work. Yeah, I mean, it can be really varied on, but you you can have simple ones that might take a couple of hours to put together, depends on, like the initial of work, or some of them, not require a lot of research in terms of workshops and stuff. And working with the customer through to be really once. So where you might actually say, hey, that is a massive migration we're performing, and to have a proper plan, I might actually need to then charge for the statement of work or stuff like that, you know, or maybe perform a couple of days of consultation and stuff. So whatever whatever that looks like, you have to get the initial engagement and stuff. So you hopefully get sign off on the next stage where you would, detail solution. So you can move. So this is typically some sort of detailed solution design. Now, again, this can really vary, depends on the engagement, guys. So now, whether you're the solution architect, whether you are working on a large migration, whether you're the solution architect here, you're working on a large migration where you have, like stakeholders or workshop discovery session, review different types of documentation, or either, or either like the existing environment and so much, but alternatively, what you are trying to do is you trying to talk to these stakeholder or either projects managers, sponsors, and stuff. So you actually have to to have a conversation to give that gives you a good understanding of what the goals of this project actually are. It is a migration, or you migrating a workload, or you innovating an existing digital, state in Azure, or maybe you're undertaking a cost of optimization exercise, just like the guy was just talking on and perhaps even upscaling or making highlight, highly available, or some existing resources that the customers has as part of their phase. So we're really trying to understand what we're trying to achieve, you know. So it's important that you pay attention to details and stuff. So what we are working with, what are the outcome needs to be, you know? It's basically, so maybe if there's any existing issues or constraint that are going to, like, that are going to force our hands and force the solution, that we design. So now again, it really does depend on what type of engagement it is. There's not one, so how big or how small it is, it might just be a solution architect, or might be, I mean, might have a few project management resources, or maybe, or the engineers and so on. But ultimately, again, it's going to be the same sort of step that you're performing, you know. And now you got that detailed understanding. Now you got that detailed, I mean, now you got that detailed understanding of the requirement, then you could actually, now you could actually have a take of a brainstorm to take together all of the brainstorm to put together a solution design, which I would assume, and it, so what sort of resources, like I said, so it's right there again. So what sort of resources is going to be involved, whether if it's to schedule, infrastructure, or policies and standard and stuff. So what, you know, what the infrastructure you are going to deploy is going to look like. So maybe even, I mean, maybe even policies and standard in terms of naming convention and stuff. So security, identity, and access management, and so on. So now again, this might just be like, it might be all the project management resources and others people. So it's going to be depend on actually the scope of the work that you perform as a solution architect. So once you got all the detailed solution design, you actually ready for the solution implementation, of course. So now again, as a solution architect, there are different type of solution architect. There's some of you guys that may be very hands-on, and some may not. Some might be performing the implementation yourself or handling it over to cloud engineer or the teams to implement with your available for oversight. So whoever is really going to be performed that implementation, it's typically look like this. It typically would look like this, where you have a, where you're going to implement that solution. So in Azure, whatever it might be, you then going to hand that over to operation. So I should just put this down. Forget. Let's make this block instead. So you probably just going to hand that over. See. So you probably going to end your project upside. Okay, let's just write that. So hand that over to operation. And so that might include some documentation too, guys. Maybe implementation of operation resources and like backup and antivirus and things of that nature and stuff. So you might have workshop and training session with the operation teams. And ultimately, you might need that sign off and stuff officially from your project sponsors. So this is the sort of things we're going to have to face as a solution or cloud architect. So stay tuned. Like I said, I've been showing you at the beginning of this video session what is it take and couple of the resources that Azure has available where you could check and look at different documentation and get too familiar with different things like that, because being a cloud architect, you may work for a company whereas you would have to do a lot of hands-on, or maybe too you could work for a company whereas you would have to know these technologies and be able to oversee them as you kind of design those technologies. You hand them over to cloud engineer or different teams to put them together as hands-on. So please just bear with me as we go in together and find out what are different things that you need as role and responsibility to be a solution architect. And should you have any comments or any suggestion, you feel to tell me, and we'll be more than happy to learn this together. I appreciate you guys will follow along. Stay tuned for another lab. I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye-bye.